Hey everybody, this is Gabby Juba with Living Earth Farms. I wanted to do one quick highlight and then I'll jump into our main topic for today. So quick highlights, in case you're wondering, I sometimes dress pretty professional for being a homesteader slash farmer. So my homestead and farm is part of what I do, part of who I am, part of my income. So I feel like will be income at some point. Um, so I feel like you see me in those clothes half the time, and the other half the time I do dress professional. I'm a CPA, launching my own CPA firm. So today I happen to be recording. I did some networking this morning, and I have not changed into farm clothes. So if you ever see me dressing fancy for one of these videos, that's exactly why, because I spend half my time in the business professional world and the other half farming and homesteading. So the real lesson, what we're going to talk through today is the biggest takeaways that I have from going through Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina. So I have considered myself a homesteader and kind of prepper since about 2020. So when Hurricane Helene hit, maybe about 4 years of experience with a well-stocked pantry, kind of thinking through emergency plans, things like that. I have watched a bunch of videos, taken a bunch of courses. I had water stocked. Like I thought I was pretty ready, and Hurricane Helene completely caught me off guard. So I wanted to do a little bit of story time first so you can understand kind of my mindset and how bad it was out here. And then I'll get into the things that my biggest takeaways and the things that I'm doing differently for myself for the future. So this is a big preparedness podcast and YouTube video, the whole nine yards. So if this is not your cup of tea, you don't have to listen or watch it. But if this is, I do think this information is helpful for anybody because you don't want to be caught off guard if there's some kind of an emergency. And I will say I was caught off guard in an emergency, and I thought I was better than that, if that makes sense. I thought I was more prepared than that. So Hurricane Helene hit the end of September of 2024, and before Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina, we had a lot of rain come through a day or two before. Then the hurricane hit as well, and it caused massive destruction. It, in some areas, was 100-year flood, and in other areas, it was 1,000-year flood, is how bad this flooding was. I have lived on East Coast, North Carolina, so getting named hurricanes coming through there, it happened. I went through Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence, you name it, and it was okay. I was okay. And most of the time, if we lost power during those storms, I would lose power for maybe 4 hours and then it would come back on again. I will say Hurricane Florence in Newbern, it hit Newbern very hard. I actually had to evacuate my house the night before the hurricane was supposed to hit. We realized that the eye of the storm was coming to Newbern, North Carolina, and it was going to put 10 feet of water in my home. And my home is a single story house. At the time, we had 4 or 5 animals living in the house, a bunch of adults. There was no way that that was going to work itself out. I will say Hurricane Florence did turn ever so slightly. So the water came up onto the cinder block base of my house, but nothing ever came into the house, which I am extremely grateful for every day. So we actually fled the night before the storm came in, went up to New Jersey because we waited so long to evacuate. We couldn't just drive to Raleigh or somewhere else in North Carolina. A lot of those hotels were already booked. And with all the animals that we had, we drove up to New Jersey where my parents were. And the flooding was so bad, we actually were stuck up in New Jersey for about a week, almost a week, and could not get back home. So while my house was okay, while my neighborhood only lost power for a day or two, maybe 3 days tops, not too bad. We did lose everything in the fridge, I believe. It was a couple of years ago. So while my house was still okay, I couldn't actually get to my house because some of the other roads were so badly flooded out. So that was its own experience. I definitely learned to stay better on top of storms. Do I need to evacuate? Do I not need to evacuate? Make that decision. sooner, have a better backup plan as well instead of driving all the way up to New Jersey. So from East Coast, North Carolina, where I was living, it was like an 8 hour drive. We just drove through the night. Where I'm living now, it's like a 13-hour drive. So I would rather not have to do that. So I do have other options now. I learned from that. I learned a lesson from that storm. So Western North Carolina, typically in the mountains, we don't really get named storms, at least not as often as East Coast North Carolina did or does still. I found living East Coast North Carolina, we maybe got a named hurricane a season. Sometimes there would be more than one, but about one a season, at least for the few years that I lived out there, seemed to be average. And Hurricane Florence by far was the worst one that I experienced out there. So Hurricane Helene, I wasn't really paying attention to the weather so much. My dog, Harley Quinn, who I'm sure you'll see pictures of and hear me talk about all the time, she was diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing major surgery to try to remove her cancer. So my brain was just wrapped into how do I take the best care of her? How do I help her through this? How do I do all the things for my dog? And this storm, I dropped her off for surgery, and a few days she had to stay overnight. Went to pick her up the next day. I was going to wait till 4 or 5 p.m. Somebody that I worked with that lives kind of in the area let me know the storm's coming through, so I don't want to wait till 5 p.m. to go get her. The sooner I can go, the better. I said, oh, shoot, I didn't know we were going to have a storm. Good thing I've got a well-stocked pantry. It's going to be okay. So drove to go get her. By the time I was coming home, the torrential rain had really kicked in, and some of the roads were starting to get not, some of the roads were not so great anymore. And by the time I got home an hour or two later, some of those roads were actually starting to flood. So I'm very grateful for the network that I have that let me know I needed to go get my dog now because she was an hour and a half away. So I had at least 3 hours on the road to get her and get back home. So fast forward a little bit faster here. So the storm came through, a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and I was woken up Friday morning. My phone went off about 3 a.m. and it let me know that I was in a flash flood area and to proceed with caution. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I've got my dog, my two cats, and I'm watching my sister's dog. I'm thinking to myself, okay, it says I'm in a flash flood area to be careful. Sometimes when we get bad thunderstorms out here, that does happen to me. So that was not abnormal. I was not, I do get a little panicked because flash flooding does happen out here. And in all honesty, flash flooding is super scary because it does kill people because it comes through so fast, you don't get a warning and it'll wipe everything away. So I was a little worried, a little concerned knowing that this was a storm coming through, says we're in a flash flood area. So I did is I got up 3 in the morning and I didn't really have a go bag packed. So what I did was I packed a small go bag just in case something were to happen. I could just hop in my car and go. And I found a website, our local newspaper has a website, and they were updating hourly all the road closures because of the flooding that was coming through. So every hour they were updating it. So every hour, because I couldn't go back to sleep, every hour I was checking what roads are flooded just in case I have to leave. I know what route I'm taking. And I drive a Prius. So for me, I don't want to mess with floodwaters, anything too deep. I know better than that. So I was starting to come up in the back of my mind, okay, what can I do? What's my exit route? And I got this. By about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, every major road to get out of my house. So my house is on a dead end. And so every major road to get me somewhere, except for one, was flooded. Like flooded out. Could not, impassable. And so that had me panicking a little bit as well. I'm like, okay, so I've got one road that can get me out from where I am if I need it, but at least I've got a road, right? So by 7 a.m., I lost power. Like, okay, this is okay. So I will also say I live near a creek. Thankfully, the creek does not actually touch my property, but it touches all my neighbors' properties. So from about 3 a.m. on, I was going out there and just doing a quick spot check because while we were in a flash flood area, I also wanted to check the rising water levels to see how fast it was coming in towards my house because I wanted to take that into consideration as well as to whether I need to go or stay. So I was doing hourly checks. Like I would basically check the website, go do a walk around the house to see where the water levels are, see if I'm pooling water anywhere on my property that I need to watch out for. So thankfully, all that was okay. By 7 a.m., I lost power. So my house is on a well, and our well is shared with my well is shared with four other houses. So we've got five houses on the well. It's not mine. There's no solar panels. So when there's no electricity, there is no running water. So what that means for me, I also have a very small water heater. Like my water heater is in my crawl space. So I don't have a big reservoir of water. I don't have that. So me not really thinking at first when the power went out, it's like, oh, that's fine. So I was still flushing the toilet, the whole 9 yards, not really thinking about what that, didn't really think that through because I'm hurt. All the other hurricanes that I had living East Coast, North Carolina, I was on city water. So when the power goes out, the water's still there. So I can still flush the toilet, I can still wash my hands, things like that, not a big deal. So by 8 a.m., I lost cell phone service. So at about 7 a.m., I did text my boss, I did text my family, and I said, hey, look, I am in a flash flood area. Almost every road around me is flooded out, and I just lost power, which means I also lost water. And then at 8 a.m., I lose cell phone service, and I have no way to contact anybody. Can't let anybody know I'm okay. Can't check the website anymore to see how bad the flooding is, to see if that one road to get me out was flooded. So I'm sorry if I get a little emotional. It was a lot. So especially, I will also say, for my generation, to lose cell phone service in an emergency situation like that has never happened to me. So I've had a cell phone since I was 13 years old. I'm 32 now, so I've had a cell phone in my life for 20 years. I can text who I want, call who I want, look stuff up on the internet, whatever I want. So when the cell phone service I went out, I said, "Okay, this is fine. I'm gonna figure this out. Don't panic. Kept doing my hourly property checks, and I knew from everything I was looking up ahead of time when the rain was supposed to stop. So I knew like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So this was all Friday morning, and I knew that the rain was supposed to stop by about Friday 2 or 3 p.m. So I knew every hour until 2 or 3 p.m. I'm just going to keep making checks just for my own peace of mind. Came up with a backup plan for myself. If things started to flood, if something bad happened, I didn't necessarily want to take my chances that that one road is not also flooded. And what I was going to do is get myself two cats, two dogs in my Prius, and up my dead end, there is a hill. So that was my goal, was at the very, very, very worst case scenario, if the water came up onto my property, into my house, whatever the heck happened, I would leave before it got in my house, of course, but my goal was at a minimum to get me and those animals up that hill, whether that was in my car or if I had to walk us up to the top of the hill and sit in the rain until the rain stopped. So this way I knew we were going to be safe. So thankfully, the water never came up, a flash flood never came through, and I was okay. So I will also say all these other named storms that I've ever stayed in place for, we lost power for 4 hours tops, and the power would come back on. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, so like 4-ish hours and the power's gonna be back. Maybe the cell phone service is just spotty and it's surely gonna come back. Not a big deal. So what I was doing is I had a lot of snacks. Like I have a well-stocked pantry, had a bunch of snacks. So I was just eating some snacks and I'm like, oh, this is okay, not a big deal. And then 4 hours went by, power's still off. My water tank is empty now. And yeah, water tank is empty, the electricity's not back, and the cell phone service isn't back. I'm like, okay, well, 4 more hours. Surely in 4 more hours, everything's gonna come back on. Because it has to, right? It doesn't have to. That's what I'm here to tell you. It does not have to come back on. It may not come back on. So I just kept eating my snacks because surely in my mind, I'm like, ah, 4 more hours. That's it. And then everything will go back to normal. And then another 4 hours goes by, and another 4 hours, and another 4 hours, and another 4 hours. By Saturday afternoon, some of my neighbors had come to check on me, make sure I was okay. So while my water tank was empty, I did have a 5 gallon bucket outside full of rainwater that I was able to bring in to flush my toilet with. I did have hand sanitizer so I could still wash my hands and stuff. I do have a Berkey water filtration system that had 4.5 gallons of water in it that was drinkable water for us. And I also know in an emergency situation, the creek that is near my house, I could fill a Berkey up with that creek water and safely drink it. Do I necessarily want to do that? No. It is a nice peace of mind knowing that I can do that, but I would prefer not to if I could help it. So I will also say I um, did not have any cash either, which added to this monster of a situation I had got myself into. So by Saturday afternoon, though, my sister's dog, so my sister was supposed to get him on Thursday, but because the roads were getting bad on Thursday, she had sent me a text and said, "Hey, I'll get him when the rain stops." I was like, "Oh, no big deal," because we did not expect the storm to be what it was. So by the time Saturday afternoon rolls around, he's running out of food. Thankfully, she packed him extra. And now I had some dog food. Like I could have given him dog food, but it probably would have really upset his stomach to drastically go from one dog food to another without any kind of mixing. So I didn't want to do that to him if I could help it. But she didn't give me like the bag itself that would tell me what type of dog food it was. It was just a plastic baggie. So I couldn't even try to get to a store if I borrowed cash to try to get him dog food because I didn't even know what he was eating. It was just in a baggie. So by Saturday afternoon, there was still no cell phone service, no power, no water. I'd eaten a lot of my snacks at that point, didn't have many snacks left. And I said, you know what? My tank is full of gas. My sister lives about 40 minutes away. And I said, I am going to try to get to her house. The last time I looked up what roads were flooded, I knew. So there are many ways that I can get to her house. I know of 5 or 6 different roads that I can take to get to her house. Based on what I was reading before I lost cell phone service, I knew most of them were flooded out. There was only one that was possibly going to be open. And so I decided Saturday late afternoon, early evening to go to drive to her house with her dog so she can have peace of mind, have her dog, he can have his food, and because I can't get in touch with her to try to come up with a game plan. I also um was hoping I'd get cell service near her, and maybe it was just my area that didn't have cell phone service. I also kind of wanted to see what kind of damage would do this, you know? So I'm driving through the full 40 minutes, did not pick up cell phone service one time. Cell phone service was completely out everywhere. And as I'm driving, the trees that are down, the water levels in certain areas, there was water for miles where there should not be water. Saturday afternoon into the evening when the rain stopped Friday. And so driving there, the one road that I took to get to her house, the water was up to the side of the road, but not onto the road. But that is still how high that water was in areas that should not have water. And so I'm driving through this, and I knew I'm driving a Prius. So I figured the worst case scenario, I come to standing water on the road, I back it up, turn around, and go back home. And at least I can say I tried to get to her house. So I make it all the way into her town. And there are so many downed trees by her house that I'm having to navigate roads that I've never driven on before. So I'm grateful I have a good sense of direction. So in general, I knew where her house was and sort of how to get myself there. So I was like driving around all these random roads, avoiding down trees, avoiding down power lines, avoiding all of these crazy things. Eventually, I made it to her house. Walked up the stairs to her apartment, knocked on the door, and I said, "Special delivery." And she, of course, was confused as hell. She didn't know what was happening. Answered the door and saw me and her dog and gave me a big hug. And I think we both started crying because the last she had heard from me was me, my animals, and her dog were in a flash flood area with no way of getting out, and they hadn't heard from me since. So they didn't know what had happened to me, if I was okay. The flooding had gotten really bad by them as well. There were people down the street from them that had to be emergency like air evacuated out of their house because the waters came up so fast they had nowhere to go. Um, this storm that came through, thankfully downtown Brevard was fine because downtown Brevard is on top of a hill, nowhere near a river or a stream. So downtown Brevard was great. There are other downtown areas in Western North Carolina that, as of today, are still destroyed. And it is, what, going on 7 months later? Ruined, like gone. Not a trace of the town. The whole downtown washed away. All of the buildings, everything washed away. And some of these downtowns are rural communities. They are small, tiny towns in small rural counties. And it's just super sad to see just that level of damage that happened out here. So, all that damage was everywhere. What knocked out the cell phone service was actually landslides because of all of the flooding. Landslides took down millions of trees out here. It was insane. It still is insane, the things that we went through that I didn't know. So, my house was without power and water and cell phone service for about 10 days. My sister's house, she lived in the city limits. She did lose power. She did lose cell phone service, but didn't lose water. Of course, her water was on a boil advisory. Um, I'm grateful that I have a propane grill outside, a propane fire pit outside, two propane tanks that were fully stocked. I told you I'm a little bit of a prepper. I'm also grateful that I had a camping stove with two propane tanks as well. So I brought the camping stove to my sister because all of her appliances, she lives in an apartment, and all of her appliances were electric. So brought her the camping stove with the propane tank, two propane tanks so she could cook some warm food for herself. Um, so the whole thing was a mess. So she didn't lose water. She was able to boil water as needed. And eventually, so about 3 or 4 days in, she got power back. And what else is that? So cell phone service came back around that time as well, 3 or 4 days for her. And I will say, when I say cell phone service came back, it was still spotty because what was happening is they were putting up temporary structures to try to give us cell phone service so we could communicate with our families, but it took them a while to actually rebuild the infrastructure that was ruined during this storm. So that is a bulk of the story. So I did not really think through eating, cooking for myself. So this is where I'm going to kind of get into the lessons of what I learned from that storm, and hopefully that can help you prepare differently. So one of the things is, do not assume your power is going to come back on quickly, because I learned very fast that that is not the case, that it may not come back on for possibly 10 days or more. So, if I did things differently, if I could do things differently during that storm, I would have started cooking for myself from day one, eating out of my fridge and my freezer, and not eating all your snacks first. Not a good idea. So that's the next piece I have is, do not eat all your snacks in the beginning because you are confident the power is going to come back on, because it may not. The next thing that you should do is think through, how are you going to cook whatever's in your fridge or your freezer or your pantry, whatever it is. So for me, I always assumed I would just figure it out. I also assumed I would have cell phone service. So like I could Google things if I needed to Google things. So not having cell phone service, I'm grateful that because I am a little bit of a prepper, I've got a well-stocked pantry. My fridge and freezer was well-stocked. I lost everything though because I wasn't eating anything out of the fridge or freezer. Um, So I'm also grateful that I had the full propane tanks for my grill and my fire pits, and I do have cast iron. So I could cook something in a skillet on the open flames of my grill and be okay. But I didn't think that through. Same thing with a camping stove. I forgot I had a camping stove until my sister made a comment about, oh, it would be so nice if we had a camping stove. And then it hit me, and I was like, I've got a camping stove. Let me get that for you. So make sure you think through how you're going to cook if you lose power in your house. Now, if you've got a gas stove inside, that's great. Or a propane-based stove already set up in your kitchen, that's amazing. So for me, like if it's actively a hurricane outside, I don't want to be standing outside on my with my grill trying to cook some food. But my camping stove, I've got more options because I've got a camping stove. So the next thing that I have on my list is to eat out of your fridge and freezer first, which is common sense. I think everybody knows that. Don't open your fridge and freezer a bunch of times. Try to keep it as cool in there as possible. If you can get your hands on ice, get your hands on ice. I could not get my hands on ice because it went fast. Same thing with gas. Everybody ran out of gas real fast too. Um, so eating out of the fridge and freezer, wish I would have done that instead of eating snacks. So I will also say part of this journey, Harley Quinn, I had just brought her home fresh from surgery. Storm got very bad on Friday, got to my sister's house Saturday. By Monday, she was actively bleeding. So it was a mouth surgery. She was actively bleeding in her mouth and it was infected. And I live in a pretty rural area. There are no emergency vets out here. The nearest emergency vet is by my sister's house. It's like 10 minutes from her house. So Monday went and got that taken care of, and I was paranoid to bring my dog back here and have her have another emergency that I have to drive another 45 minutes to go get her looked at. So I actually stayed at my sister's house in Hendersonville with my dog and two cats until the power came back on at my house, until I was confident that my dog was going to be okay, that I had cell phone service, running water, the whole nine yards. So by Monday, so about 3 days in, I went to her house. She got power back a day or two later. Things were starting to look up at her house, so I enjoyed a little bit of normalcy, getting to take a hot shower, getting to cook inside, things like that while my house was still kind of out of commission. And I also didn't have cell phone service at my house still, so that also was a bummer. Um, Sorry, I lost my train of thought with where I was going on that. So, my fridge and freezer. My fridge and freezer because I wasn't cooking or eating anything out of it in the beginning. And then I went to my sister's house for the next 5, 6, 7 days, however many it was. That shit was nasty. By the time I came home to clean it out, it was disgusting and everything was ruined. Everything was ruined after 10 days. Of course, it would be ruined. So, thankfully, if you did not know, your insurance, some homeowners' insurances will step in and pick up the cost of replacing the items you lose in your fridge and freezer if you lose power for that many days. So I had to provide an inventory of everything in my fridge and freezer. So I was grateful that I took pictures before I emptied it out. Number one, so I could show the insurance company how much stuff was in there. Number two, I could show them how disgusting it was in there. And then I also had something to base my inventory off of. I based it off those pictures that I had. So based on store prices for everything, so some of it I do make myself, so I can make it cheaper, but based on store prices, I lost $750 worth of food in my fridge and freezer. I lost a full gallon worth of homemade kimchi. I lost homemade sauerkraut. I lost homemade chili in my freezer. Like I lost so much stuff that I wish I would have eaten out of my fridge and freezer first to prevent that from happening to me. So the next piece that I have on here, really a lot of it is food related, but also have meals prepped ready to go. Like I wish I would have had cans of soup in my pantry, whether it was cans of soup from the store or cans of soup that I made myself and put up in my pantry because that was super convenient. So me, I live by myself, and the way I cook right now is I cook on Sundays for 5 full days. So I cook on Sundays for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, sometimes I am out and about and will pick up food, or I've got like I kind of scrounge through the pantry and eat one-off meals or one-off meals out of the freezer, like whatever I need to do during the weekend to get by. If I need to cook a little, I can. But I usually batch cook everything on one day, and I rely on my fridge and freezer to keep the rest of those servings safe and edible for me throughout the week. So all of a sudden, when we lost power, and that's why snacks were easier because I'm used to batch cooking and I couldn't batch cook anymore. And all my recipe books, a lot of your recipe books are between 4 and 6 servings when you make something, not just one serving. But I had no way to keep all the other servings cool. So even if I could make whatever that recipe was, I had no way to keep it safe enough for me to eat. So I will say, think that through as well. If there's maybe only two of you, or one of you, or three of you, or like a weird number that might produce leftovers, maybe there's 7 of you and you may wind up with leftovers. Think through, how do you cook for that? Do you just have a bunch of single meals in the fridge or freezer or in your pantry? Or do you know how to cook like that? So for me, if I had access to Google, totally would have Googled a bunch of stuff and figured it out. But I didn't have access to Google. All I had were my recipe books. And yes, I could have cut the recipes by a fourth or a fifth or whatever it was. But yet again, if you open up, so some of the recipes, you might need vegetable broth or cans of green chili or chilies and adobo, like some kind of can you open. You don't want to open that can for a single serving of a meal you're about to make if you can't put it in the fridge to keep it fresh to cook with again. So just thinking that piece through, it would have been helpful. So I will say now what I do have a bunch of like single prepped soup things in my pantry ready to go. Number one, they're convenient on the weekends. If I don't feel like cooking and I need something really fast, I can just pull one of those cans out. But in an emergency situation, that's also very helpful. So the next piece that I learned, we're almost done. The next piece that I learned is to always keep cash on you. Always keep, even if it's not in your pocket 24/7, but keep some kind of cash, whether it's in your house. I probably wouldn't put it in your car because people can get into your car and maybe steal it. But I have cash in my house, locked up safely, of course. And I will say, I don't have a ton of cash. Like, I don't want to keep $5,000 in cash in my house. I don't think that's necessary. But I do have a minimum of $100 now at all times in my house because I needed it when this storm hit and everything was cash only. So I actually had to borrow $20 from a neighbor so I could get Harley Quinn more dog food. That was a whole nother mess. I did pay her back. I'm very grateful that I got the $20, but now I always have cash, so I won't ever have to do that again. Another piece that I have changed for myself is to always have a go bag ready. So when I got the notification that I was in a flash flood area, I said, oh, let me make a go bag now. But what if the flash flood had hit? It would have been too late for me to make a go bag. It was way too late for me to make a go bag. So I will say my go bag, you can kind of go to the extreme on go bags. This is not a go bag like lesson here, but the go bag essentially is items that you might need to get through a short-term crisis of some kind. And that's up to you with how much is in your go bag. What is in your go bag? Is it 12 hours worth of supplies? Is it 24? Is it 3 days worth of supplies? Whatever it might be. So for me, it just has the basics like a change of clothes. It's got a way for me to filter water if I need it. It also has a way for me to, some food for my animals, snacks for me, things like that. So just something to think about. Have a go bag? Do you have a go bag? What is your evacuation plan? So I think that is the bulk. The last piece that I have is water. Think through if you have city water and when your power goes out, you keep your water. Think through how would you boil that water if you're under a boil advisory. Also think through if you would lose water like I would living off a well, how would you how would you do that? how do you drink water safely? So the 4.5 gallons that I had, and I had maybe 2 or 3 more gallons stored somewhere else that I could drink, they went fast because I needed that water not just for me to drink, but for my animals to drink and for washing dishes, things like that, where I wanted sanitary water. So not only is a water filtration system cool, like a Berkey, but having stored water can be helpful for a short-term temporary situation. So I now have enough water stored to get me and my animals through at least a week off of what I have in my house. So that's always a goal of mine that I have. So just something to think through, and we can talk through a lot more of these lessons individually, but I wanted to give you a full picture of what Hurricane Helene was, why it was so bad out here, why it was so bad kind of for me, and things that I learned from there. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any, sorry, if you have any feedback, any more questions or follow-ups, please feel free to reach out, and there will be a lot more lessons on preparedness as we go.